And the Academy Award for Best Picture.
La La Land.
Guys, I'm sorry. No, there's a mistake. Moonlight.
For my project, I will be looking at the 2016 film Moonlight to explore whether it is a modernist film or whether it is more of a postmodern film. There are many characteristics that define modernist films, but American movie critic Bill Nichols describes fragmentation, montage, a modernist character, an alienation effect, and heightened subjectivity as the most important. Fragmentation is used to demonstrate what Nichols calls the fragmented nature of reality, where there is often little consistency to human behavior. One of the techniques used to demonstrate fragmentation in film is montage, which takes different clips and fragments them into a whole. Another aspect to this type of film is the modernist character. He is one that typically experiences a fragmented reality due to an alienated state from society, known as the alienation effect. The final tool is heightened subjectivity, which Nichols says explores the interior of its character's thoughts. One example of this film that we have viewed in class was the 1959 film Hiroshima Mon Amour that utilizes all of these elements with an often heavy emphasis on the modernist character and montage. In contrast, postmodern films take a different route. Again, Nichols describes four major aspects to these films, including questioning of individualism, the surface of things and the loss of history, allusion and citation, and the fact that a familiarity with racial, gender, class, or pop culture is not needed. Questioning individualism points out the fact that often humans do not dictate their own autonomy, but often other forces dictate this fact. Next characteristic is the surface of things and the loss of history, which Nichols describes as the refusal to hint at a hidden depth to signify superficiality. The final aspects are based on allusion and citation, where many postmodern films draw on previous works as their inspiration to celebrate its style, but often familiarity with these previous works are not needed to understand the positions in these films. One film that uses all of these techniques is the 1994 Quentin Tarantino film Pulp Fiction. Barry Jenkins' 2016 film Moonlight tells the coming-of-age story for Chiron, a young, quiet African-American man from elementary school to adulthood in Miami, Florida, as he deals with the struggles of living in a poor society as a closeted gay person. The movie is told in three parts: Little, Chiron, and Black, all names he is called throughout the movie. In the first part, we see Chiron, nicknamed Little by his peers, being chased by bullies. He runs into an abandoned crack house where Juan, played by Mahershala Ali, comes and rescues him. Juan, a drug dealer, quickly assumes a father figure role as he finds out that Chiron's mother, played by Naomi Harris, is addicted to crack. In addition, we are introduced to Kevin, a friend of Chiron, that helps to teach him to stand up for himself. In the second part, Chiron, we see Chiron grown to be a high school student, still quiet and standoffish, and still constantly threatened by bullies. It is also revealed in part 2 that Juan has passed away, but his girlfriend continues to help him out because Chiron's mother is even more addicted to drugs. One night, Chiron goes to visit Kevin late at night on a beach in Miami, where Chiron experiences his first encounter as a gay man. The next day, Chiron comes to school hoping to hang out with Kevin more, but ends up being beat up by him when a bully pressures Kevin. The next day, Chiron comes to school and hits the bully with a chair, and he is then shown being taken away in a police car. In the final part, Black, a name given to Chiron by Juan in the beginning of the movie, we see the main character as a drug dealer in Atlanta. He is reasonably successful and is able to pay for his mother, who is doing much better, to live in a rehabilitation center. Out of the blue, he gets a call from Kevin, who says he was thinking about him. Chiron drives to Miami, where he meets with Kevin, who is now a chef at a diner. They discuss their life since the fight. Chiron confides with Kevin that he was the only person that he had ever been with, and the film ends with them sitting lovingly next to each other. While not often in the film, fragmentation is present. Nichols gives example of fragmentation as eruptions of unpredictable urges and displays of uncharacteristic attitudes. Following Kevin beating up Chiron after being pressured by bullies, Chiron returns to school the next day, filled with anger and hatred, walks into class, and hits the bully that compelled Kevin with a chair. Up to this point, the audience has had no indication of Chiron being anything but a quiet and mild-mannered boy, and his quick change in attitude is a surprise as it seems against his nature. While not as blatant as the opening sequence of Hiroshima Mon Amour, Moonlight utilizes minor montage sequences throughout the film in order to demonstrate Chiron's isolated and often nightmare-like state. In the first clip, we see Chiron being berated by his mother. What makes this seem like a dream-like or montage sequence is the fact that the audio of the clip cannot be heard and all that is audible is loud classical music. It demonstrates that Chiron has learned to tune out the constant abuse he faces in his daily life. This clip is actually used in various scenes throughout the movie to indicate when Chiron is seen being to be in a dreamlike trance. The next clip shows Chiron as an adult driving to Miami to meet Kevin. This scene shows Chiron driving open highway, then the beach with many children playing in the water. This montage leaves the viewer on a happier note because we are hoping that the encounter will be a positive one. The beach is important to him because it was the place where Juan first taught Chiron to swim, and Kevin and Chiron had their first encounter.
Here is the first clip.
Another way that this film displays modernism tendencies is through an alienation effect. In this very brief clip from the movie, there is a minor detail that helps contribute to the alienation effect in the movie. In the scene, Juan comes and finds Chiron huddled in an abandoned drug house after being chased by bullies. In this clip, there is a small reflection over the door as Juan grabs the doorknob. While extremely minor, this detail helps contribute to the feeling that the life of Chiron is viewed by the audience through a window, rather than seeming to be placed into the character's mindset and surroundings. In addition to setting the viewer away from his reality, it also seems to place Chiron much farther back and away from the other characters in the film, leaving him as an isolated individual. This visual effect is seen in many instances through the movie, including when Chiron's mother is buying drugs from Juan, and intimate scenes between Kevin and Chiron. Now focusing on Moonlight from a postmodern viewpoint, we can see some examples of how this film portrays these ideals. One of the most important ways that Moonlight embodies postmodern ideals is through questioning of individualism. In the third part, we see Chiron as a grown adult. He is now a moderately successful drug dealer and is able to make sure that he supports his mother in rehab. What is interesting about Chiron's character in this act is that Chiron seems to be emulating everything Juan did in the first part. He dresses like Juan, including brilliant jewelry, controls similar neighborhoods, listens to Cuban music, and even drives Juan's old car. Because Juan was probably the single most influential person in his life, Chiron wants to do everything he can to preserve and continue his legacy. It goes back to questioning the individual. Is it an autonomous decision to be like Juan, or does Chiron personally decide that he wants to live the lifestyle of Juan. I personally believe that it brings up an important idea that humans are only influenced by others, and no one is truly an individual with original and free thought. Another hallmark of the postmodern genre is the fact that for someone to enjoy and appreciate a work of this genre, they do not need to be familiar with the many references to race, gender, music, or class that are mentioned in the work. Being familiar with any of the references will simply add to the viewer's experience. Moonlight sufficiently uses many of these references through the film, primarily through some of the music choices. The music helps to set up the fact that Chiron lives in a primarily African American community, not to discuss the racial disparity between African Americans and white people. While there are numerous postmodern aspects portrayed in the film, I personally believe that Moonlight more similarly relates to a modernism piece of work. It utilizes many of the aspects discussed, with a primary focus on the alienation effect in order to demonstrate the isolation of the main character.